Tim Brown, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thank you for having me.
We're very excited to have you in the Export Beer Garden studio today. Long-time listeners will know we've been manifesting this one for about 3 years. Started as a football show, moved into business and all sorts of areas. You cover both. So, yeah, we're really excited to have you on and very thankful that you've given us your time. We're recording this the day after Halloween. Did you dress up? Have you embraced being an American dad?
Yeah, I did in a sort of a Karate Kid skull and crossbones tracksuit, and coming off an evening with a bunch of friends and kids who stayed up too late and ate too many sweets. So this morning was a little bit of a train wreck at the Brown household, but it's a big deal here, and it's I've come to really appreciate the holiday.
But despite being there for so long, it seems you've retained a lot of your Kiwiness. How do you keep yourself and your kids connected back here to New Zealand?
Well, yeah, look, that's really important to me. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I feel very fortunate. My wife's American kids have been born here, came over to university in America, and it's given me a lot. Our business is based here and been built here. But I'm very clear. My heart is back home, and that's where I come from, and it's really, really important. And I think a lot of that is just intention. I kept in touch with a lot of people that I grew up with. Where I come from, getting back to New Zealand is super important. I really want my kids to be as Kiwi as they can be, and anyone who bumps into me knows I'm never short of a New Zealand reference or keeping across things. And then, in the most joyous of ways, Kiwis like to travel. So I feel like they're always trekking through the place and coming to stay with us. Yeah, my wife gives me a hard time because, all sorts of people coming to stay, and it's very much an open door policy. So I keep in touch with lots of people that way too. So Kiwis are never shy of coming to stay with you.
Just be mindful of the audience that you've now openly invited to your place in San Fran, including Stephen and I. So we look forward to joining you over there.
Case in point, yeah, you're not shy. I'm sure I'll see you at some point and go, oh, did I really invite them?
Yeah. I think I mentioned it. So how often do you get back these days?
Oh, that's why COVID was so difficult. It was just locked out and not being able to do it. That just really wore on me because I'm back, 3, maybe 4 times a year for various reasons. Obviously, with Allbirds, there's been a big overlap with New Zealand, and it's a really important market for us for a whole host of reasons. So that's one part of it, and then bring the family back at least once a year for Christmas or just to see mum and dad. My family's still just in Wellington. My brother's there, mum and dad, and lots of friends and family. So any chance I have, I'll grab it. And I was back recently for my mum's 70th, which was awesome. And it's pretty easy from San Francisco. You jump on a plane overnight, you're home, and you can kind of do it for a few days if you need to. So I feel very fortunate in that regard.
Our favourite type of guest on the show is one that has lived at least 2 lives. And before we get to the incredible business story, we wanted to talk about some interesting moments from your first career, which was football. And we want to set the scene in 2009. The All Whites had qualified for the home and away playoff with Bahrain. New Zealand football wanted to play the game in Auckland, and they had a supposedly unbreakable contract with North Harbour Stadium to host the game. But you and a few others had an initiative that actually wasn't the best choice for your playing group. And I was hoping you could tell us about the One Shot for Glory campaign.
Oh, yeah, what good memories. So, there was this like core group of Kiwis, many of whom are some of my great friends in sport and in life. And we'd kind of come up together through the age groups pretty early on. I want to say that we'd be part of an under 23 New Zealand team. We realized that I think it was maybe Ricky Herbert was the coach of that team, and he was the first person I remember, stone cold remember it. It was after a game, and he said, "You realize this group, in 2010 you could go to a World Cup." And I want to say it was like early 2000s, like pretty early on, and it was just such an absurd, ridiculous statement that I remember just like hit me in my gut. I was like, there's no way, but then oh my gosh. And that group just sort of became great. And then, of course, you layered on top of that the Ryan Nelsons and Simon Elliott's and all those others. But there was Leo Burdos, Chris Killen, Ben Sigmund, a core group of guys that literally had been in the same age group at school and had come up, through Wellington and through club football, and so we started dreaming, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves like, oh my gosh, this dream is down to the final game, and without being too negative, there was a fairly decent track record of dysfunction at New Zealand football in terms of realizing these moments and making sure that everything was coordinated, and and that's maybe a little unfair because resources and challenges, but I think we'd pegged that, hey, this is the biggest game of our lives, and moreover, it might be one of the biggest games in New Zealand sport. And our fear was it was going to be on a Tuesday night at Albany, and no one knew about it. And so let's play it in Wellington, which, at the time arguably was the home of football. The Phoenix was there. There was so much energy. So many of the players in that World Cup team were from Wellington. We knew at that stage we were going to play most likely, Saudi Arabia or Bahrain. So the idea that it was just windy and freezing cold in Wellington, and at the time we had, this players union, the small mighty players union that had a little bit of money, and we sort of thought, let's take some of that and put it towards, promoting this game, and so we took that as a playing group, which I think is almost unprecedented, right? Like group of players marketing their own game with their own funds. And we found a local ad agency and a guy there, Mike Higgins, who was amazing, who just jumped on it. And we got New Zealand football down and said, hey, we just got to do this. And if you do this in Wellington, we'll fund the marketing of some of this. And we've got some big ideas. And so it was just this joyful thing that just sort of happened out of nowhere. And all of a sudden we're kind of in the business of building a concept around this game. And the title became One Shot for Glory, and it was the start of a really, really special period and one game of football that really changed my life.
Without skipping ahead too far in the story, was that kind of the chrysalis of your first big idea of bringing an idea to life?
I think it was, I think it was, hey, look, I'm not the best player on the team, far from it. I'm going to try really hard. I'm going to do everything I can. But maybe there's some other things that I kind of grew in confidence with through my sporting career, that, hey, there's some other things that maybe I think I have a handle on that I can contribute to the team, and whatever it takes, let's work out a way to win this game. And if it involves me utilizing maybe some of my skills off the field and stitching some of the stuff together with some people that I really respect, and in the process that can bond the playing group even more tightly towards the opportunity this game represents, shit, wouldn't that be great? And then all of a sudden, I mean, I'd spent, my college years trying to get in the door of these types of advertising agencies for internships and different stuff. And all of a sudden I'm sitting in there with a little bit of money, kind of like a client. And that was like, wow, this is the best thing ever, So I think it was just an emerging sense of a little bit of confidence for me that, hey, if I see something, I can maybe go and impact it with energy and confidence that maybe I've got something to offer here.
Well, for the two of us particularly, and all of the people that were there that night, thank you very much for making it an incredible experience.
Well, it was just such a special week, mate. I mean, I could talk for so long about that game, but, at the end of the day, the agency realised that this was one shot for glory. We hadn't been to a World Cup for 28 years since 1982. And the people that went there had the opportunity to be part of history. So their concept was really simple. It was like, we're going to shoot a high-res photo 2 minutes before the game starts, 360. And it was going to be such high res that they could put it on, social media afterwards, and people could tag everyone. And I've got that printed out. It's about 1.5 meters wide, 360 of the cake tin in Wellington on my wall. It's my proudest memento. And the idea would be that in 20 years we'd have an exhibition of anniversary of that qualification, and you could zoom in and say I was there.
Yeah.
And I just remember that week, Wellington turned on the most awful weather. Everyone dressed in white, and it was just, I think about the nerves and the pressure, and then the best party ever after we won, and we did it, and the people that were there, they remember that they were there, and were you fellas? Did you go?
Yeah, I know exactly where I was and who was next to me every moment of it. I remember driving down from Auckland via Tauranga all the way down to Wellington, and just as you got in there, it was epic, and not even part of like the actual playing side of it. It was phenomenal. Obviously, not part of the playing side of it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I think that was what the players kind of knew, that's what the environment that we wanted, and that we were only going to get one chance in our lifetime to do this. And with all due respect to Albany on a Tuesday night with 15,000 people there, this needed to be something different. We needed every single edge possible to get this across the line, and then that's what we did. And there's so many great things that week. As part of this, one of the things I kind of have to mention, because if he'll want me to, but I got introduced to a little bit before that through the ad agency and through this process, Stephen Fleming, New Zealand cricket captain, and asked him to come in and talk to the team beforehand. And he still claims to this day that he's the reason we qualified, because he did this speech that was just extraordinary. But what a remarkable guy. He probably spent, and I was nervous asking him, because this guy, he was like, one of my heroes. And he probably spent 3 hours prepping for what was about a 10-minute, less than 10-minute speech. And it was just, he came in, apparently I subsequently learned he was holding his first ever black cat, because he was so nervous about doing this talk. And he came in, and that group was just wound together tight. There was, I don't know, we were determined, and it was really special. And so we won that game and changed our lives. Yeah, I did, certainly without question. Allbirds and all the things that went on would not have happened if we hadn't won that game. It's funny, right?
Yeah, and it's just the most Kiwi thing ever that your starting central midfielder, one of the best players in the team, is organising a marketing campaign to make it happen. I fucking love it. So it leads me to the next moment I wanted to talk about, which is, in the build-up to the World Cup, the pinnacle of your career, every footballer's dream. You were vice-captain, a locked-in starter to play in the middle of the field with Simon Elliott. And then 10 days before the tournament, you get injured playing against Australia at the MCG and miss the whole World Cup. I was wondering if you reflect on that period, like how was your head after that, and how that, like, the culmination of your football career's work and it's gone. Like, what do you think about that?
Oh, there's so many lessons, like good and bad from that. Like, at the time you're brokenhearted, and it was in the best of ways. Like, it was the most important thing to me. There was nothing I wouldn't do to be a part of that and to help that team be successful. It was everything. And then when it didn't happen and that went wrong, of course you're gutted. And in the fullness of time, you realize it doesn't matter. That no one remembers who was really on the field, and you were a part of a team, and the team did amazingly well, and all that sort of stuff just sort of fades into the background. And important lessons sort of not, I think when you're at the coalface of something, just having that ability to sort of zoom back and get perspective is super important, because otherwise you can kind of get lost in it. And I did for a period, and I'm not proud of that, because but it was heartbreaking. But so this is what happened, right? I break my shoulder at the MCG in Australia. What was it? 20 days before the World Cup, and I end up. My brother's at the game. The whole team goes on to Austria for a training camp. I jump back on a plane. My brother's there with me, so he flies with me. We go back. There's media everywhere, and unlike anything that had really been in my career, just because of the World Cup and the interest. And I was the only player back there. So we kind of hunkered down in the team doctor's apartment, just my brother and I, in Auckland. And I met the surgeon, this amazing guy, in Auckland, who did the surgery. And then all of a sudden, people just started coming out of the woodwork. My dad sent me a book called Every Bastard Says No, which was the story of 42 Below. And I read that book. It was such an inspiration of sort of just do it your way, and ended up sort of getting photographed with that book. And next thing I know, Jeff and Jussie Ross kind of had me around for dinner and brought all these like New Zealand sporting legends around to kind of wish me well and give me advice. And next thing I know, the Prime Minister, John Key, came into the hospital bed and kind of saw us. And there was just such this overwhelming show of support, and I did everything I could to try and heal and get right. And I ended up getting on a plane and ultimately didn't get on the field. But it's one of those things. All the stuff that is at the time you think is bad ends up being the source of the memories. That those two weeks I spent with my brother, extraordinary. We met a who's who of famous New Zealanders that were coming out to sort of see. And so, you just sometimes you assume the tough bits are, but so I think that's the bit that I wish I'd just been a little bit more even keeled and not so sort of catastrophic in my mindset around not being able to play, because in the fullness of time it doesn't matter, and there's good things that come out of some of those tough spots.
Yeah. Tim, when you miss that opportunity to play on the global stage, does the fire sort of dampen out of you there, knowing that you've got these other opportunities, or are you thinking, 2014, I'm going around again?
Well, for me, the most important thing, I was going to sound twee to say it, but it was the team, So I wasn't probably right to play. I think I probably could have contributed, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter. And so you just got to keep that in mind. And equally, all of this sort of stuff, and it's apropos for sort of some of the things that we go through Allbirds. I learned a lot of lessons through some of those extreme moments of pressure and expectation, that just take the long view. These things ebb and flow, and there's some really good things that, as cliched as it sounds, that come out of the really tough periods. And that was true then, and those are the memories you hold on to. The time spent with my brother in Auckland, and I've long since moved past the idea that I didn't get on the field because I couldn't have helped the team, and it wasn't about me. It was about that team that got so close, undefeated, the only team in the undefeated. So I mean, who the hell cares? You're part of that, and there were better players playing than me. I knew that. So get over yourself and get on with it. And so I think just it's funny, these same patterns kind of just ebb and flow and play back to me through sport and now into business, and that stuff's just gold in terms of learnings and lessons. If you just have the courage to sort of zoom back from some of the stuff,
So a few years later, I remember the announcement got made, Tim Brown retiring, and you were 31, and I was thinking, shit, what? He's still got like 3-4 really good years left in him. Like, it caught me by surprise.
I think I wrote the media release, Brownie.
Did you?
I think I might have. I might have been at NZF at that time. It was interesting times.
But were you just ready for the next chapter in your life?
Yeah, it was just the World Cup is just, it was there, and then once it happened, I knew it was never going to get any better than that, and it was time for me to go on and find new challenges. And I was only ever good in a professional environment and for New Zealand when it was absolutely like I was on the edge. I had to be kind of so committed, and I think I was a little tired maybe of doing that, and I knew that as soon as that dropped, my standards dropped, I wasn't going to be useful. And so that's just about being really honest with yourself. And equally, the football thing was amazing. I took it further than I ever thought I could have, by far. But it was time to kind of go and do some different things. And I just didn't want to be the last guy at the party. One of my cousins, family, Anton Oliver, the rugby player, had kind of done something similar, training and leaving rugby to kind of go back to study. So that had always been a real inspiration for me, and it was just the right time. And I leveraged the World Cup and that story to put an application into a school in London. My father and my grandfather had worked on Fleet Street in London. They hadn't gone to university, but the London School of Economics was right there. And I'd always wanted to go back to London. And, I thought about it a lot. And I just said, if I can sneak my way into the school, this is an opportunity to go start chapter 2. And there's some other things I want to go do. And I've had a great run, but the greatest sort of sign of respect I can show that experience is to leave it when it was the most important thing. And so I did. And I copped a fair amount of criticism, not from people close to me, but, and I understand that because there's a lot of people who would like to have the opportunity to do that. But for me, it was actually the opposite. It was about respect for that context and time to move on and seek something new. And I went backwards. So I went and did the best that I could to spend the life savings and some of the money I'd made from the World Cup to reinvest in myself, go back to school, study all the subjects I'd avoided at design school in America. And literally the LSE, which is a great school in London, they sent me this letter and they said, congratulations, you're starting in September. But paraphrasing, basically, we don't know how you got into the school, and we've kind of looked a little bit more closely at your transcript, and we'd like you to come in 2 weeks early and do some, remedial like maths classes because we think you're going to struggle. So I had to kind of literally go back to the beginning and prepare. And I'd met a guy at the A-League Grand Final that I'd gone over to in my last year, and he told me about this dorm in London that was for postgraduate students. So I'm literally in a dorm, single bed dorm in London, back at school 2 weeks early with the freshmen starting again, and it was incredible. It was just exhilarating. Sometimes you got to go a little bit backwards to go forwards, and it soon quickly became much harder, but it was the courage to kind of go backwards a little bit with the idea that there was another chapter ahead, and confidence that would come if I took the time.
Yeah, really humbling to go from like the man at football into the classroom mode. We're sort of going to cross over into business already there, but I'm really keen on the very origin story of the shoe, like the fascination with shoes, because it crossed over with your professional football career, wasn't it? In the last few years, with no shoemaking background and a pro football career to focus on, you sort of, where did this interest in shoes come from?
Well, it was a little bit less interest in shoes per se, as much as it was doing something entrepreneurial. And, I had a lot of time when I was playing sport, and actually someone who's become a really good friend, Conrad Smith, gave me some advice one day. He just sort of said, don't work as hard, put as much energy into the off the field opportunities, the sponsor events and the kind of community service, and good things will come back. And equally, use the time to meet different people. You've got a window in time when just about anyone will meet you and give you some, give you time. And so I tried to really approach that with real energy, and along the way started to sort of latch onto this entrepreneurial path. And I'd studied design at university in America, and so that creative piece was always there. I was always sort of sketching and thinking, like, I kind of knew deep down the football was an incredible experience and I could do it if I really worked hard, but the design thing was the thing that I was really meant to do. And so I just used every moment I had to prepare. And the idea of shoes came about a little bit by the sponsorship and all the free gear I got. I just sort of looked at it and I was like, oh, why has there never been an iconic New Zealand footwear brand? I started sort of reading a lot about the origins of Nike and Bill Bowerman, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Arthur Lydiard and the Auckland Jogging Club, and New Zealand's success with Peter Snell, and the 1960 and 1964 Olympics and middle distance running, and Bill Bowerman, who was the founder of Nike, coming out to New Zealand and meeting Arthur Lydiard. And I was like, oh my gosh, New Zealand has this like incredible provenance of footwear and running, and why, there is permission here to create a brand around this. So it was kind of over many years, just kind of piecing together these fragments of a story. And again, you take confidence from history, right? And I was like, oh, maybe we could do that. And so that's what I set out to do. But I was knee deep in the Phoenix and trying to go to the World Cup. And so it was very, very much a sort of a random thing. And I got made fun of a lot in the locker room when I started to tell people about this.
Did you like prototype some and then dish them out to the boys?
Oh yeah, never dished them out. Always charged.
Oh, you charged? You charged?
What did you charge?
Yeah. My theory was if I could make shoes and sell them to a locker room that got free footwear, that was the most competitive environment that you could ever imagine for sort of footwear commerce. So I found a factory literally online. I did a holiday in one of the A-League off seasons. I went to Indonesia and I walked into my first footwear factory and I started making shoes. And I would sell them to my teammates, to my friends. We had a little retailer in Wellington. My brother was helping me out. And Paul Eiffel, I want to go on record, I still send him shoes when I can, because that guy, he backed those initial shoes. He really did. What a legend that guy is. And so, yeah, that was the start of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really fun. And so I worked on it for ages. And then along the way, I was reading a magazine article in my apartment in Cuba Street in Wellington one day about the decline of the wool industry. What I knew with the shoes is that were interesting. I had a real design perspective. That was really the first founding insight of Allbirds, was like shoes were over designed and there was an opportunity in unlogoed, simple footwear. And then the second one was just materials. And I was reading this magazine about the decline of the wool industry. Peak sheep in New Zealand was 1983, north of 100 million sheep, but it had been in decline. And no one for multiple generations has grown up in New Zealand wanting to be a sheep farmer. And yet we had this miraculous fiber, was such a core part of our history. And, in really simple terms, like, could you make a shoe out of wool? And that was really the starting point of, everything. And it was just, again, as history and ideas and just a willingness maybe to give it a crack.
It's captivating listening to you retell those origin stories, or that kind of the idea there. How's that going in the locker room? Are you keeping a lot of that knowledge to yourself? Are you kind of slowly sharing it with people?
I think over time I got more confident to share. I mean, again, sport has come a long way, but there was still an element of like, hey, if I was taking online courses at Massey and doing different stuff, and like, there was a sense of a couple of things. Hey, you get made fun of a little bit, and two, it would give people the impression that you weren't laser focused on the football. And so I think it took a little bit of time for me to sort of establish myself and grow confidence where I could let the boat out a little bit and share that with people and make it clear that this was not in conflict with doing everything I could for the team, and that it was okay to have some stuff outside. And we had just an incredible group, like it really was like a wonderful team, like one of the, both in the All Whites and with the Phoenix there of, people that became great friends, and they were so open and welcoming to the stuff, and they gave you a hard time, but they were, Andrew Durantes of this world, just incredibly great characters who were like, always supportive in the best of ways about what we were trying to do.
Because there's some mail swirling around from, I think, the training ground back in the day that the reason that the shoe kind of came about was because your big toes wouldn't fit into normal shoes. Is there any truth in that?
I've got not very good looking feet. That's an understatement. Danny Vukovic, if you remember that name, he kind of came to me one day and he goes, "Oh my God, I've seen a lot of like bad feet in football dressing rooms. Yours are the worst. It looks like a dog chewed on them. What's wrong?" So I always got a bit of a hard time. So that the joke was that I had to kind of create shoes that would cater to my wide and unwieldy feet. But here we are.
So
I showed them.
You sure did. So as the storyline progresses, we mentioned you went to the London Business School in 2012, and then you did an exchange at Northwestern University, which I've heard is kind of like one of these moments across the journey where the Walmart CEO gave you some advice in an entrepreneur class that you were doing about this idea for woolen shoes. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a kind of a famous class at Kellogg called New Venture Creation. I went over there on an exchange from London. Carter is just this sort of larger than life, incredibly successful corporate executive who's now a teacher, swam at Stanford, he's a big presence. And he had this class, I think there's 60 people in the class. He locks the doors at the start of it. And in the first class, everyone gets 3 minutes to pitch a business idea. And then over a series of rounds of voting, it gets whittled down to 10 teams of 6 with the 10 best ideas.
Wow.
So I get up and pitch wool shoes in a squeaky, nervous voice, and somehow get selected. All of a sudden I have a team, and I run through 10 weeks of this class with Carter, and it changed my life. And it was like, thinking about this not as a product or a concept, but actually as a business, which I'd never done before. And I'm getting all sorts of questions about supply chain and margin. And at the end of that 10 weeks, Carter called me into his office, which was, he knows who I am. It's kind of like he knows my name, kind of like one of those ones. And he goes, "I've been teaching this class for a long time, seen a lot of different ideas, and this is by far and away the worst one." You don't know shoes. You barely know business. Wool's never been used in footwear, and God, it would be great if you at least grew up in a sheep farm. That's not even the truth either. So I said, but for whatever reason, you seem really determined and more trying harder than anyone else in this class. So I suggest you go home and put this on Kickstarter or something so it can fail, and then you can get on with your life, because otherwise I fear you're going to be one of those guys that just sort of wallows in this for a long time and makes yourself miserable and unhappy. And I walked out of the meeting going, "I think he likes me." And I went home for Christmas, and with the help of my brother and Ben Foreman from Wrestler, a little video agency in Wellington, and $400, we shot a video with the 6 prototypes of merino wool shoes that we had at the time on a family friend's farm, Grays Road in Pahatanui, and called his bluff, and I put it on Kickstarter.
So that video is great. Like, that was such a good launch. But I'd heard that you were quite reluctant to do it, and you were kind of getting nervous about putting yourself out there, and you needed a pep talk from your brother to actually.
Oh yeah. So I think it was there was a McDonald's in Plympton where we went before we started filming, and I'm just like, "Bro, what am I doing? This is not a good idea." And we're like writing the script, and he's like, "Jesus, just do it. I'm sick of just all the self-doubt. Let's just get moving." I've taken day off work. And so we get up there, it's kind of raining. Ben sends on over because we gave him no money, like one of his like intern cameramen who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else but there. It's kind of rainy and drizzly and all overcast. And we're on the back of this like sheep farm. And I'm up in front of the camera, like super wooden. And it's not going great. And the camera guy's also doing the sound. We've got 6 shoes. And my brother's just like, stop. He's like, I've taken a day off work. This is so horrible. Please give me something. Give me some energy. Give me something. And he was walking over trying to get me going. And the fence was electrocuted and electrified. So he grabbed the fence and just electrocuted himself and was writhing on the ground in pain. And I don't think I've ever laughed so hard. And it was like a sign from above. And I was like, you know what? All right, let's go. Let's have some fun with this. And we shot that video, and we had enough wool from the research grant to make 1,000 pairs of shoes. It sold out in 4 days. We did $120,000 of sales, and I had to shut the thing off, and it was just the beginning. But I always think there was some sort of divine intervention. So to my brother, thank you for electrocuting yourself.
It's a beautiful performance. It's hard to believe that you were so stiff beforehand.
Well, it's you got to see my brother. He kind of puts one hand on the thing, and he realizes, and the other hand comes on, and then he kind of, you can't see this, but he flips backwards and then kind of just gets dragged into the fence, and then his whole body's twitching. And it was just he took one for the team, and it inspired me. So I think I had to go and put my best foot forward.
We sort of glossed over a detail there, like sold 1,000 straight off the bat. That is essentially, in my mind, making it. You've made something really successful, and it's been a big success on the market. But from what I understand, that wasn't the case. Like that added to the street. Like now you had to make these things, and it was going to be break even at best.
Yeah, well, all of a sudden it's like, sometimes again the moments from the outside that look the best are actually the ones where you go, oh shit, we've got to go do this now. And so those moments outwardly of like, oh, fantastic, you've done this. I was like, oh my God, now how do I actually make this work, and how do I deliver on this? And it ended up embarking on kind of the hardest year back in London of doing my best to spend my life savings with a tiny apartment full of wool shoes, and a factory that I again had found on the internet in Portugal that was tiny and doing their best, but was fairly amateur. And it was so hard. So it's like kind of careful what you wish for. All of these little incremental moments kick off a new level of challenge. And that's been pretty consistent through my career. Congratulations, you've had a little bit of success, and now things are going to get harder. And that was certainly the case from that moment on. But
did that initial drop of the shoe give you confidence in the idea, or are you still kind of squirming when you're trying to explain it to people?
Definitely. And again, much like Stephen Fleming's speech, that was a 2-minute video, but I did a lot of thinking about it, and I spoke with a lot of people, and I realized, hey, we've got to sell this idea in the first 15 seconds. And that video forced me to go from idea, relatively easy to have, much harder to put your face to something and get up in front of your friends and family and say, hey, I've got something that I believe in, and make it concise enough that they'll pay attention. And so that was such a test. And I definitely pride that someone other than my mum actually bought those shoes. So that, definitely there's a feeling of, okay, but there's also straight away it goes to, oh, here we go. It's like anything else. You make promises up front that you now have to go deliver, and Kickstarter is a sort of quintessential example of that. And so factory, supply chain, customer service, design, scaling, all these things that I'd never done before that I was doing by myself. It was so hard. And so kind of careful what you wish for, but I was underway, and sometimes, the courage just to start is sort of, if I look back on that, that's what I'm proud of. We got moving. We didn't talk about it, we went and did it.
It's so cool hearing from someone who has achieved what you have when you zoom out, to hear back about those difficult times in London. And I've heard you talk about how friends around you all seemed like they were successful. You had been the successful guy, and now you're trying to just create this woolen shoe, and you're sort of dinner parties and going around, and you aren't filled with confidence talking about what project you have going on. Because there's so many listeners I know that will be in that same show. They've got something they're working on, but they don't really know it's going to work. But just, it's such an inspirational story.
Oh, well, I appreciate you saying that. It certainly didn't feel inspirational at the time. I'd obviously had this great run with football, but then I couldn't, I come out of London School of Economics and even this Kickstarter campaign, and I couldn't get a job, couldn't find a job, couldn't get an interview, was chasing down kind of every introduction and trying to get something going in London, and I couldn't. So the shoe idea almost became a bit of a default. And I was 32 at the time, and, my girlfriend, now my wife, we're in London, and everyone was in that sort of that peak of their career when they're out and about, and I'm still going out for dinner going, shit, I hope this check is not too expensive. And I'm like, how am I back here? Again, I've kind of gone backwards, but actually in hindsight, that feeling is you sort of want it in some level. Like I've come to learn that I want to feel some aspect of that pressure in some level, that when periods of my life when I haven't, something's been missing. And so, but I remember like being in dinner in London and people would go around, oh, nice to meet you. We're making new friends or whatever. What are you up to? People would say, oh, I'm doing this, and this. And then it'd come to me and I like my body language would all wrap up and I'd go real small and I'd squeak out like wool shoes. And people would come pat me on the head. Oh, that's really nice. Good luck with that. And, my girlfriend would come up afterwards and go, what is wrong with you? She's like, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing. But, you got to kind of go through those moments. And we did. And we kept going. And sometimes there's a fair amount of courage with that stuff. Just kind of keep on going.
Yeah, you kept going and the snowball starts building. I'm not sure the timeline here, but you get an offer from a New York investment firm that they're interested in sort of buying in. And this is the point where, you've had a good, by all accounts, it was a decent offer, but you sort of sent it around to a few friends and people who knew contracts to see if it was a good deal. And one of them was this guy, Joey, who you kind of like loosely knew through acquaintances. That period is really interesting to me because it seems for the first time, here's this big money offer. You've achieved what perhaps you set out to, but then you pivoted and decided not to on the advice of someone you kind of vaguely knew.
Yeah, well, it's like anything else, and it kind of happened in both cases, both in my football career and in this business context. So when I was playing, I came out of university in America, didn't get drafted, spent some time at the Galaxy. They sent me down to one of their feeder teams in Richmond, and I was playing there, but I'd set myself a target. Like I needed to be in a full-time professional environment. And if I'm not by a certain period of time, I'm going to move on. And I'll give it everything I have, and then I'm going to move on. So I set some parameters to sort of the pursuit of what you're going for. And in the end, I went to England. I got released by Swansea and then Bristol City. And then I came back to New Zealand. I was like, I think time's up. And then I got a call from the Newcastle Jets, Jade North, Craig Moore. Do you remember the defender?
Yeah.
He'd come back from Newcastle in the Premier League, gone to the races, got really drunk, and got pulled out of the Socceroos. And Jade North from the Newcastle Jets got called up as his replacement. And so the Newcastle Jets signed me on a 6-day contract, and I played my first A-League game. And the only way that kind of happened was because I just sort of said, I'm done. Unless you offer me a full-time contract, it doesn't matter, I'm done. And so I'd sort of been really clear and quite hard with myself. And then, of course, they offered me that contract, and it was the beginning of the A-League. And similarly, in the context of business, I'd sort of said, hey, if I can't get Allbirds to the place where this is operating and I can pay myself a paycheck, and then I've got to move on. And so I kind of did. And it was Joey actually that brought the idea back to life. It's just sometimes when you have the courage a little bit to quit or walk away from something, or to do it only on a certain set of terms, all of a sudden the world works around and sees that you're serious and kind of gives you what you want. and so in both those cases, it was kind of the power of walking away and feeling incredibly energized that then actually brought me back to those ideas, because what I stood for and how I was going to do it were non-negotiable. And Joey gave me a call. I flew to San Francisco. I'd just taken another job, my first ever job, and he said, hey, don't leave this now. This is a big idea. And while you're making wool shoes, there's something else going on here. The world's about to change. We're going to need to remake all the products and services that we use every day. And nature's making a comeback. We've been making things out of synthetic materials derived from oil for 50 years. And what you're making and in the category that you're making it in fashion. No one's really done that, and no one's done it in a meaningful way. And why don't you and I raise some money and do this properly, because you've got something here. And that only happened when I kind of had the courage to walk away from some other direction that just wasn't right. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, Joey appeared.
Can you just give us a snapshot of Joey? How are you very different people?
Yeah, well, there's an American and Kiwi, a confident American who kind of flies into most situations because he's so smart and so accomplished, definitely, but with just the confidence he's going to work it out. And then you have the kind of Kiwi, it wouldn't surprise you, who's like sort of second guessing themselves. And so there's a cultural difference there. Obviously trained as a designer, he's an engineer, and had come out working in the biotech space, had been a chief of staff for a company that he'd taken public, been to business school, really accomplished and experienced, but thinking and training like an engineer. And I'm a designer and a creative, so like really, really different. But our wives have been roommates at university. I'd met Joey at weddings before. He'd actually been one of the early Kickstarter customers, crazily enough. And he gave me a little bit of advice on the previous deal and then suggested that we do it together. And so that was the beginning. And just an incredible partner who did all the things that I couldn't do. And all of a sudden, the lonely days of trying to do it yourself were over, and I had someone to do it with. But more importantly, and most importantly, in all the ways that I had a vision for the product, like the design and the creative piece of it, he had a vision for the purpose. And so that was like, it didn't get any easier from that point, but man, it was clear as that this was a problem worth solving, like a really meaty thing that you'd be prepared to commit a big chunk of your career, if not your entire career, to sort towards solving. So it was very, very important. Couldn't have done it without him.
So you and Joey are vibing, you make this connection, you've got this vision for the company. And then is it like you go out and you start pitching to VCs in places, and that you're trying to get money coming in? And was it like you'd go and you'd do a pitch and you wouldn't really know how it would land, and then you get an email or a call back and say, holy shit, these guys are actually backing us?
Yeah, he was like, let's go. We're going to raise, some money. And I was like, okay. So he sent over some shoes. He literally had a sack of shoes. He jumped on a plane, went to New York, and just hit the pavement. And he just fearlessly, in ways that I couldn't have done, I don't think, fearlessly started pitching this. Not as a wool shoe, but as a business that could be anchored in natural material innovation and shift an entire category. Just this bold vision. One that I don't want to say that I didn't believe. Of course I did, but I wouldn't have been bold enough to actually make that statement of intent. I just would have, the Kiwi in me would have said, no, you can't say that. You can't. And yet he pulled the strands of this and shaped it into, a story. And he went in and he made it happen. And literally, I was getting married June of 2015, and we were taking investor meetings. I had my bachelor party on a Tuesday, and Ben Sigmund and Winston Reed and a bunch of characters were coming over to celebrate, and Joey's organizing pitch meetings all around us. and I'm like, Joey, there's quite a lot going on. He's like, we've got to do it. Now's the time. He's not going to stop or wait for anything. He's that type of character in the best of ways. So we had one big meeting that was literally the only time this guy could see us was at 2:15, and my bachelor party was due to start at 2:30.
Oh, brilliant.
And I was like, I care deeply about what we're trying to build, Joey, but I can't be late.
I got this checklist of jobs that Siggy set this checklist of tasks, and I can't fuck it up.
I know, but I'm just I'm already nervous about what these guys are going to do to me as it is. And if I show up late, I'm just fuel on the fire. So let's just make this quick. Joe's like, no problem, I've got you. So he comes in, he's like, to the investor, Ben Lehrer, who ended up writing the big check that kicked this whole thing off. He's like, look, here's the straight facts. We've never made shoes before. We're not from the category. There's a big chunk of this we don't know what to do, how to do. But let me tell you, what we do know. We've started. We've sold $125,000 worth of shoes. We've got a vision for the design and the category. We've got a vision for the purpose. Let us go, and we won't let you down. And Ben signed on. And I think I got there a minute before the thing started, and they made me get into some costuming. But I lived to fight another day, and I got to the wedding, and all is well. Sometimes you just got to kind of say it how it is. And Joey just did that in a remarkable way. And again, this was another sort of inflection moment. And we're, all of a sudden now we're off to the races, and we're going to build this together. So we moved to San Francisco. We had our money and started working out of his mother-in-law's house. I was newly married, waiting on my green card, and we were working with an unpaid intern who was like his neighbor's son, and his dog Walter in this house, just kind of like, okay, we're going to give this a real crack.
So you launch, and I'm not sure the timeline of this from when you're talking about, but end of the first month, million USD in sales. Is that right?
Yep.
And
so we had June, we got married, raised the money, moved to America, and on the 1st of March 2016, we launched the product. And I think I remember because I went back for my brother's wedding in New Zealand, and like a few days before we launched, then we came back, and Time magazine called the shoes the most comfortable in the world in the first week, and it just took off. And I can't tell you how many people that we sat in rooms with who knew about shoes and knew about brands, and they said, you can't launch with one shoe, and you can't do it this way. It's not going to work. But we had the courage to kind of shut it all out. We launched with one shoe, 4 colors, reshot the video. I think the budget had gone up from $400 to $6,000 at this point. And, I've got, it was like a cameraman and a sound guy this time. And I'm like, whoa, this is big. And we launched it, and and there was, I think we did 1 million pairs in the first 14 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's right. It just kind of just took off from the beginning, and it connected, I think, for people. And yeah, I mean, again, 2016, I've been working on this at this point for 8 years.
Yeah.
So it's a long time, but there was clarity on what we wanted it to be and how we wanted to present it, and we went and did it.
So there's a lot happening at this point. You're business owners now. There's sort of HR, there's people stuff, there's yours and Joey's relationship to manage as this thing grows. Like, was it quite overwhelming, all of the different aspects of, you're not just designing shoes, you've just got everything to think about?
Yeah, we had a kind of again, first sort of disagreement right when this was just flying. And we realized that, oh man, we've got to be really careful about this relationship and the way that we manage it, and the way that we look out into the future, and the way that we sort of make sure that we're doing the right things. And we stopped kind of letting that happen and started being really intentional about that. And we started thinking in sort of give or take 3-year chapters, being really clear about what we were good at and what we weren't, and where we could help. But then checking in a really structured way, weekly, monthly, and then having a trip away together once a year to kind of make sure that we were super aligned on why we were doing it, how we were doing, and whether we were kind of performing. And so that was a real catalyst moment to get really serious about the way that we were leading the business, because all of a sudden it was a business, and we needed to start hiring people and growing a company. And I'd never done that before. He had a lot more experience than me. I had to learn really, really quick, and I needed to be good, because if I wasn't, then I wasn't going to have a role, because the standards were really, really high for what we were trying to do.
Mark Ellis, in his episode with us, spoke about celebrating the achievements and taking time to celebrate those milestones. Did you and Joey do that as well? Did you have, or was it just so fast-paced that the whole time
So when my football career ended, we had this like barbecue at Mum and Dad's place, and Mum came over, who has been such a champion supporter of everything that I was trying to do in sport. She said, "Oh, we're so super proud of you, but we're also looking forward to having you back." And that like hit me pretty hard, and I realized just how sort of in the zone I'd been. And I had this like nice bottle of wine, I remember, in like my apartment in Cuba Street, and I always said, "Oh, when I get to this point, I'll drink that." And I sailed through qualifying for the World Cup and going to the World Cup, and I didn't know, I hadn't cracked it, because there was always something a little bit more, and that just was my mindset. And I promised myself this time around, it's not going to be like that. I'm going to learn my lessons, and the relationships and the friendships and the people around this are as important as what you're building. And I think it was super powerful. And Joey has really helped and taught me that there's the power of laughing and the power of celebrating when it's going well, for sure, and also maybe when it's not. And we've had a really good time for the most part through that, and he's been a big part of that. And I think also just learning the lessons from the past. There's always a little bit of an edge in me that's going to be like, oh, it just could have been a bit better, and it's a blind spot for me, and I have to watch it, particularly managing and leading people. But it's also the fuel, I think, for why you go out and believe you can do something, and you're never quite satisfied and always pushing it forward because you think it can be better.
There's so many cool moments that we're approaching, and I'm not sure how linear it is, but like Leonardo DiCaprio getting involved. How did that connection happen?
Again, some of the stuff super random, but I think his brother-in-law, I think he was working on the solar panel business with him, with, I think it's Elon Musk's brother. I forget, somehow came in the business and knew him. And next thing I know, Joey and I are kind of meeting with him, and he just is so into what we're doing and became a partner, at that time, which was amazing. And it just felt like there was so many of those moments that you could never have planned for, that this, that all of a sudden it just started to build momentum. And, but, I think, again, we never got too carried away. It was always, these things are cool, but this isn't what we did it. Why we did this for. We did this for wanting to build a company and a business. We'd actually got together and written a story together with this first 6 employees 10 years into the future that we still share with everyone that interviews with us. And I was like, the first time I heard about this, I'm like, Joey, I'm not doing that. That sounds completely fluffy. But we sat down and we wrote this story, and it was like, hey, what are the mistakes we're going to make? But where are we going? What are we trying to create? And it was a place that had a lot of the strands of being part of a team from my sporting experience, and a lot of the strands of Joe's vision around purpose. And hey, if we're going to build this place, like, let's build a company that people are proud to kind of come and be a part of. And so that sort of stuff was there. And so don't get me wrong, those are cool stories, but it wasn't what we were living for. It was kind of, that's not, truth be told, it's not, those are kind of good stories over a beer, but it really wasn't the bits that you remember. I promise you that.
So you're telling us that working out with Barack Obama is not in that 6-year story?
Yeah, that one might be. Yeah, that one. Maybe that one might be a little different. But just all, I remember Mum calling me, and Jacinda Ardern had met the Australian Prime Minister for the first time and gifted him a pair of Allbirds, and I was just, it was just stuff like that just started to happen. You just pinch yourself, and there was an opportunity to, to speak as part of the Obama Foundation. So I went to Kuala Lumpur for one of his leadership conferences and spoke, and him and Michelle were there. Got the opportunity to meet him. My dad came over, and just like, wow, this is too good. So yeah, there's just some really, really special moments that kind of came about after a lot of hard work.
So November 4th, 2021, Allbirds go public on the Nasdaq. The initial valuation is $3.3 billion US. What do you remember about that day?
We went to New York, and it was amazing, to see sort of Allbirds and Times Square. I didn't know an enormous amount about what that would be, but I knew it was the biggest stage in business, and it was like kind of getting into the Premier League, and then to go there and see that and feel the presence in New York was definitely special. And we took a lot of our early employees there and kind of rung the bell. In the case of the Nasdaq, it's like a digital bell, which is a little less cool, but it was it was special when you have those moments of reflection of like, wow, this has come a long way. And equally, per the earlier parts of the story, holy shit, we've got to go deliver here. And I think we can. I think we're ready. But this is everything's going to get a little harder. And I remember being really conscious of that pressure and that expectation, and particularly with as well as it had gone. almost immediately we knew this was going to come for us.
That public announcement of everyone seeing how well you've done and knowing how much money is attached to you, how did that change your relationship with people? Did people act differently towards you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'd be lying if I didn't say that it didn't in some cases, but I think I was very, very attuned to that, and I would like to think other people will tell you that it was never a motivating factor for me. It wasn't the thing that drove me. It's still not, and it brought with it a certain level of discomfort. But yet, like anything else, it was a time for not getting too high or too low, or thinking that you were really good all of a sudden. And I think I've done a pretty good job of trying to sort of stay through that. And there's a lot of people that have helped me get here that I've stayed with for a long period of time. So there was no case of me jumping in to get a whole new set of friends. I very firmly knew where I came from and what I was all about. And so I'd like to think that, we just, here's another opportunity to kind of go test yourself at another level. And that's the focus. And let's just keep trying to do that and keep trying to get a little bit better.
Does that even keel hark back to your football days where your dad used to send you cutouts of newspaper like reviews of when you'd played shit?
Yeah. They did like the end of season sort of report cards, and he clipped one out of the paper, like left it on the bed that I would come out and stay at sometimes. And I was like, why are you giving me this? He's like, you got to be okay to deal with the good stuff. You got to be able to, if you're going to take the good stuff, you got to be okay to deal with this. And people don't think you did very well, so do something about it. I was like, oh, God, thanks a lot.
Did he ever get on Yellow Fever and really get to the meat of some of the stuff that the people can say on there? Because they can be brutal from experience.
Oh yeah, no. You got to train yourself. You have to train yourself to be okay. Yeah. And you know what? Oh, I'm gonna use this as fuel. And I think he helped me learn and understood how to kind of deal with that. And it was sort of a different type of training. And there's probably a lot more resources and different ways to do that now that are a little friendlier. But at the time, he was a confidant and someone that I knew the only thing he wanted was for me to enjoy and make the most of this experience. That was the only thing that he wanted. And so, okay, well, how do I learn? How do I learn to deal with that? And there's two ways you can go. You kind of give up, or you actually, you know what, I'm gonna go see if I can prove this a little bit wrong. And so I think I learned to do that. And again, a lot of the experiences then in sport have stood me in good stead. When post IPO, all the headlines that were incredibly favorable turned pretty quickly pretty negative about Allbirds. And I was like, okay, I've seen this script before. I've got some experiences here I can fall back on.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that. You made a LinkedIn post and it essentially said, a lot of the time on here I just share stuff, or stuff is shared which is positive, but there's some stuff going on. And it was talking about Allbirds, shares dropping. I think it was 101 million annual loss. What was going on? Like, we're riding this roller coaster and there's highs and downs, but what happened over that period?
I think we COVID, we had hired 60% of our team through that period. We're growing really fast. So we've come from sort of 0 people, literally Joey and I and his dog Walter, to 1,000-person global organization. And we lost a little bit of focus. We brought a couple of things to market that didn't work out as we planned. And then we ran into sort of the headwinds of the sort of big shift in the economy and in public markets and the expectations for early stage growth companies. And we hit a really tough period, and we're still in it. And it forced us to take a really hard look at the business and who we are and what we stand for, and go through a period of, transformation. And I put that up on LinkedIn because people would come up to me like, oh, this is absolutely terrible. You must be devastated. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Truth be told, this is not easy. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not enjoying this, and I would prefer it was going really, really well for our shareholders and for our employees. But, I also remember a tiny apartment in London full of wool shoes that people laughed at, literally. And so I've been here before, and I think as much to our team, I can start to be confident enough to talk about this and to be really, really clear that this is, if we're smart, this is part of how we're going to get better. And we just need to have, again, the courage to zoom out a little bit. Broken shoulder World Cup, zoom out a little bit and see this for what it is, learn from it, try and get better, and then we go again. And so that's what that was about. And there was a pretty incredible response, actually, really humbling, from people that were like, "Oh, well, thank you for having the courage to talk about some of the bad stuff." And I think good things have come from it. And then all of a sudden, okay, we can roll up our sleeves and let's go again.
Yeah, and that resulted in you changing roles. What was the thinking? Did you want to get more sort of hands-on design?
Yeah, it was again, going back to Joey and I, real spirit of honesty, and that idea of 3-year chapters, and realizing that it was like the right time for a single leader, and he was the right person to do that, and that there was a different role for me to play that was more creative. No one had ever thought or imagined that I was a kind of corporate executive, and increasingly that was a big part of my responsibility. And so there was, in the expanded scope of what the business now was, an opportunity really to play a role as co-founder that was about the culture. It was about innovation and thinking, having a little bit of distance from the coalface to look further out. And there was different ways to contribute, and there was a better place for me to be in the team. And it was really simple. It was really clear. Wasn't always easy, but it was the right change, and we made it really clearly. And Joey's now leading this, and he's shaping the next chapter of it. And like I said, on the day here in America, it's we're obviously here in November. I think it'll be a little bit later in New Zealand, but we just launched the second version of the Wool Runner, that first original product. And I'm incredibly energized and excited, about, okay, we're going to take our lumps here, and then we're going to come back stronger and better for the experience.
You've got incredible self-awareness and obviously very good open and honest communication with Joey as well. But have you got external references and external reference points that help that feedback loop as well?
Yeah, I think, obviously family, super important. My brother, my parents, wife, obviously really, really couldn't have done it without them. There's Joey, obviously, in a professional context, a core group of friends that I see at least once a year from university in the States that are incredibly important resources for me in terms of just sort of grounding, and then a lot of people, the Ben Sigmans of this world that, were in my wedding, that were, the friends that I go back and connect to, who are never impressed or by Allbirds, or they're not looking at the share price. They're just wanting to make sure that you're in the same place that you were and that you're doing all right. And so that definitely has been super important. And then I think, like anything else, I've come to add in a professional context. Joey and I have for a long time coaches, one coach in particular that worked with both of us, and Carter Cast, some of these people that went out of their way to kind of push me, have become friends. And, I think we don't maybe use or think formally enough about the role of mentorship. It's not a word that I've had to become more comfortable using, but there is a couple of people that are really, really important, that are my phone call when I have a professional challenge or something that I'm trying to navigate. Hey, what's the angle on this? And so all of those things I've invested in over a long period of time, and I've been really, really clear that I need help. You all need help, and you need really, really solid sounding boards, people that are going to tell you the truth as much as pick you up when you need picking up as well. And I've been very, very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, we've got a source over in San Fran who highlighted your desire to always improve, reflect, and learn, and he mentioned this executive coach that you guys share and said he's really direct and blunt, but super insightful and helpful. And I'm guessing when you are at the position you are in such a big company, it'd be easy to get yes men underneath you and people just always agreeing with you. But someone that challenges you and is blunt and honest with you must be quite refreshing.
Yeah, it's like anything you kind of learn over time. You want to, whenever you're a little bit of sort of complacent, even going into in professional sport into a game, you want to have that the little sort of edge. And so, you go looking for it, and you go looking for people and relationships that you trust, but also love you enough to tell you the truth. And so, because there's always something, right? There's always a little thing that you can do, and finding that tension has been really important. And in a weird sort of way, it's kind of been a part of my kind of happiness as well. And it's got to be managed, but just that little bit of sense of like, oh, okay, yeah. I got a little bit of work I can do here, a little bit of stuff I can improve on, and it helps. So it's been an important part of my kind of mindset. And yeah, there's people like that you surround yourself with that help you get there.
Talking mindset and talking kind of away from business, are there any Tim Brown life hacks that have stood the test of time, or stuff that you do to keep yourself on an even keel?
Oh no, I don't, I run, like the exercise thing. When I stopped playing sport, the thing I missed the most was just sort of that feeling of being fit and exercise. So like running and kind of, that's been my one thing that's been really consistent. Not always running, but just this idea that I have a little bit period of time where I kind of reset my mind, like whatever I was worried about, kind of once you've gone for a run or kind of bit of exercise, whatever you're worried about is gone. I also find that when I come off that, I'm really creative. I keep these sort of notebooks that I've kept since I was a undergraduate at design school. I had this professor that said, write everything down. Someday, just have enough belief that those fragments and scraps of different things that you observe will add up to something material. That was an incredible piece of advice to get as a young kid. And so they're full of a vast number of mediocre thoughts, but the little scrapbooks and things I'll see, and I've kept them for, going on, what is that, over 20 years now. And they're never far away. And so writing that stuff down, and, you start to sort of, it's not quite a diary, but it's sort of just observations. So there's something to that's been really, really powerful. There's always the belief that there's another idea or another thought that's going to add some value, and continuing to be creative and find space to be creative has been really, really important for me. And so those notebooks become important. But no, other than that, no, I wouldn't. I just trying to enjoy this as much as possible, and just feel very, very fortunate to be where I am, and got a couple of young kids. So, there's not too much room for life hacks. Just trying to keep it all together with those guys.
Yeah, I wanted to briefly touch on your journey through parenthood. I imagine you could work 1 million hours a week if you wanted to, but is putting a work-life balance, like a restriction on the hours you work, important to you?
Yeah, really, really. There's always another email to send, right? So challenge yourself to be really good and set really clear guardrails around how you're going to work. And it's amazing, the world works around you, and you tend to be hyper-focused. The funny thing, people always ask, oh, the hours must be really, really bad when you're building a business. And I'm like, no, it's the wrong question. It's not the hours you work. It's this thing just drills down in your brain, and you'll be waking up at like 2 a.m. going, oh, put the wrong laces in that product. They're too slippery. They're not tying up. You know what I mean? Just like really, so that you become almost a little, so you've got to be really, really careful. That's where exercise is really important for me. Just kind of get out of that. And then just trying to do everything you can to be present. And look, you have choices, right? You hold the pen, you can, family is the most important thing for me. And I hold true to that. And you can get an awful lot done too. The other assumption I think that people make is, this work-life balance kind of question, and it's sort of underlying that is the assumption that work is bad and life is good. And sometimes the opposite is true. And so just being kind of balanced about that, and just writing the script the way that you want to write it. One of the real perks of founding a business, and I got this advice early on, there's not many, but one of them is that you get to choose who you work with and how you work. And so you can design and define the culture. And equally, I know too that people within organizations and existing organizations, they hold the pen a little bit more than you think. And so if you set guardrails, people almost more than often will respect that. And if they don't, they're probably the wrong people to work for in the first place. And so, and then within that focus and those constraints, you just tend to do better work. And so I think I've learned that. And I think Joey and I, both been parents from the beginning, him from the beginning, me pretty early on into the journey. So we were very, very intentional about the way we designed that.
Is there any version of the future where Tim Brown brings his family back to live in New Zealand?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. In what shape or form or how that happens, TBD. There's a lot of unfinished business here and with Allbirds. But yeah, look, like I sort of said, my heart's there, and America's always going to be a part of our family and my life, and I owe it an incredible debt of gratitude. But New Zealand is very, very important to me, and so in some shape or form, yes.
We'll be strung up if we don't ask this question, but is there also a world in which Tim Brown's two passions, football and business acumen, combine, and we see you contributing to New Zealand football in some way, or football in New Zealand in some way?
Oh yeah, I'm excited by that idea. I definitely feel like a debt of gratitude and a lot of opportunities that sport gave me. Both to come over and play in the collegiate system, which I think, Stephen, you know about.
Oh, Brown, don't do that to him.
Oh yeah, don't get him going.
Don't get him going on that.
Leave him, Shane. Let him say his piece.
So there's a debt to repay, and like I sort of said, I mean, I actually did my thesis at grad school. I had to write a thesis at the London School of Economics, and one of the big challenges is getting someone to sponsor you a thesis, and I couldn't get anyone. I couldn't get anyone. Like, no one wanted to touch me. And so I'm struggling. And then I hear about this. There's a football professor at LSE called Ignacio Palacios Huerta. I'm like, I've got to go see this guy. Sounds interesting. And so he's done most of his research. He's one of the world's leading econometricians from Bilbao in Spain. And he teaches at LSE. And the majority of his life's work is around football research and analysis, and largely focused on penalty kicks, amongst other things. So I meet this guy, I go into his office. He kind of doesn't even look up from his desk. And he asked me one question. He goes, "Do you hate Real Madrid?" And I was like, "Well, I don't, but I can do." He's like, "I want you to say, fuck Real Madrid." So I go, "Fuck Real Madrid." He goes, "I will work with you." and Ignacio became a friend. I'm still in touch, another mentor again. And he helped me get through that dissertation. And that dissertation was about New Zealand and the Asian Football Confederation. And it was focused on the idea that Australia had left Oceania and joined Asia, and the government had helped support that. And it was a big thing, the power of sport, because Asia all of a sudden was sort of an unlock with football in terms of all these new trading partners. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be an amazing thing if New Zealand did that? And I imagined at the time that New Zealand could support a couple of A-League clubs, more A-League clubs, and one in Auckland, one in Christchurch, and with Wellington, and that eventually Oceania and the AFC would somehow come together, and you could have three professional teams and New Zealand all of a sudden playing football against, all the people they were now trying to do business with, and that, we could have an Asian Champions League and, FC Tokyo and Auckland on a Wednesday night, and derbies between Wellington and Christchurch, and, So the idea that that's now starting to happen in Auckland then is incredibly exciting, and hopefully somewhere down the line there might be the opportunity to plug into that. But it needs to happen, and it's really exciting.
You've been reading my scrapbooks, those scrapbooks that you were talking about of 20 years of your thoughts. That's exactly the shit that I write in my little scrapbooks of a Pacific Premier League and all that rubbish.
You keep mediocre thoughts. You get mediocre thoughts down on paper too. Well done. Thank you.
We're getting towards the end there. I know you're pressed for time. I've just got a few things to read. But before then, when you do podcasts like this and you reflect, like for me, it's such an incredible story from the beginnings we talked about to what you've built and where you are now. Do you look back with incredible pride? Are you at a place where you're able to look back with just pride at what you've achieved?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Certainly, through this period too of Allbirds being doubted, and I think it forces that sort of reflection. And actually, in the moments where these things have been doubted, you take a lot of strength from the things that you've overcome in the past. And yeah, so I do have a lot of pride. And again, a lot of people now, north of 1,000 within the context of Allbirds, that have signed up for this what was a crazy wool shoe idea. And so how can you not be like humbled and proud about that? And so it's good. And then now, opportunity to kind of keep on going, and that perspective that, again, through the story, all the things sometimes that you think are the best bits are often in the fullness of time not, and vice versa. I was watching a documentary at one point about Tom Brady. This found one of my notebooks, but I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but story of the farmer, Chinese farmer. So basically there's this Chinese farmer, and he's farming his small farm with one horse, the singular horse that he has, in a small village. And one day the horse runs away, and all the village come to the farmer and they say, "Oh, terrible news, horrible about the horse. You're, really big trouble here." And the farmer says, "We'll see." And the next day the horse returns with 5 other horses. So the villagers come in and say, "Oh, congratulations, huge good luck. You got now 6 horses. You nailed it. Well done. We'll see." And the next day his son's trying to break in one of the new horses and gets bucked off the horse, breaks his leg. Villagers come. Terrible misfortune. We'll see. And the next day the army comes through the village. They're recruiting young soldiers for what would turn out to be a bloody, long war. And the son can't join the army because he's got the broken leg. And I was like, heard this. I was like, oh, this is so good. I hadn't heard that for a long time. All the things that you sometimes think are the tough bits are actually the beginnings of. And so that's sort of a little bit where we're at. And I think when I think back on that, I think I've learned that maybe not as clearly as that story states. But if you just have the courage sometimes to kind of keep leaning into the things you want to do, and the things that you think are important, and the things that you think can contribute, and you zoom backwards from the wins and losses and don't take them at face value, that's the bit I'm probably most proud of. And here we are. And yet, give what you wish for, there's a whole new set of challenges on the horizon. So you got to go again. Have you guys seen the Beckham documentary?
Yeah, I've not watched it yet.
Oh, you should. Like, because again, it's another example of like, oh shit, he just kept on rolling,
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, so yeah, I think in your mind it's a lot easier than it maybe it was, but you just, fuck, what am I going to do? I'll keep on going, and then lo and behold, it clicks. And so even right now, it's super interesting. We're going through this sort of challenging period, and keep on going. Your luck turns, and then all of a sudden, you know what I mean. And so it's just, there's a lot of pattern recognition in this, with the benefit of a little bit of time. And I think I get that sense when I tell the story, because I'm not like thinking like this chronologically normally. And so I get in and talk to you fellas, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, yeah, that was a pretty shitty moment, but just around the corner there actually was a really good thing. So it's all cliched stuff, but hopefully you folks get something from it.
I was listening to a podcast you did with someone else, Gentleman's podcast or something earlier, and it was really inspiring because we're 4 years into this, and we're building a business, and there's lots of opportunities coming, and there's been pitchforks in the road and stumbles and things, but it's so cool. You just keep going, things will happen.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, there's this one story that again, what I'm realizing too is I haven't really told a lot of these stories, and I've started now to tell them to the company. And like at one point, we're in London. Trying to get these shoes made for the Kickstarter campaign, and I get this phone call from this guy that works in the factory, who I just gotten to know. Like, he was a low-level guy, but we went out and had drinks or something when I was sleeping in Porto near this factory, and he calls me up. He's like, the factory's about to go out of business, and you need to get over here quick. So I jump on an EasyJet flight from London, land in Portugal, and I'm like, go to the rental car place. I'm like, dude, I need a car immediately. I'm on like a mercy mission to go rescue the wool out of this factory. And the only car they have is this little pink car. It's like literally a little pink smart car. So I'm driving down this thing, and I get to the factory, and in my mind I do like a skid in the car park, but I probably just park it politely. And I go in, and I know where the wool is. So I storm into this little factory, and I grab the wool, and it's long rolls of wool that's specially made for the shoes. And I think they've made like 800 pairs. So there's like 200 pairs or something left. And so I go to get them in the car, but the car's too small. So I have to wind the window down to like have the wool stick out of the car. And the lady who owns the factory, who's actually been really good to me, comes out. She's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, I can. in my mind again, I say something like really profound, but I think I was like, and then I go to get in the car door and I'm like, see you later, but thank you. And I get in like the passenger side, I get in the wrong door, so then I have to get back out.
Amazing.
Like I still viscerally remember. And then I'm driving down this like highway in Portugal with wool sticking out the window and a little pink car going, what the fuck am I doing? And I ring this guy who's got an uncle who has a little footwear factory, just him and his nephew. And so I drive into the suburbs of Porto in Portugal, into the basement of someone's house, and they agree at a markup to make the last 170 pairs of wool shoes out of the wool from my pink car. And I'm outside this house in the suburbs going, what am I doing? Yeah. This is embarrassing, you know, like really embarrassing. I never told that story. And in the last year, I've started to actually like attach that story to our values. And one of our values is getting a little bit better. And I'm like, sometimes you just got to get in a pink car, you got to drive. And you don't want to stay in the goal is not to stay in the pink car. The goal is to work out how you can get the hell out of the pink car. But sometimes you got to get in the pink car and drive. And I think that, again, it's a little bit of confidence to actually go, you know what? That's fucking bonkers. Like that whole series of events is sort of nuts. Yeah. But actually, for a large organization, you know, you get up and so I think that's been the biggest lesson in the last year is just actually like talking about some of those rough spots and some of those things. And then you go, you know what, there's actually, if we can do the same thing, we can drive a little bit in the pink car, get out of it as soon as we can, we'll work this out.
Because that's part of your role, right? Is that innovation part is the brand storytelling element, yeah?
And the culture piece, right? Like that's the bit that's so on my mind at the moment. I think like culture is a word that like people use all the time and no one really knows what the hell it means. And so I was guilty of that. Culture is really important. What does it mean? Oh, I couldn't actually define it, you know? So I've spent a large part of the year digging into that. And there's actually a Kiwi guy, someone you should get on your show. He's called Owen Eastwood. Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah. Belonging Book.
Yep. And he just helped the European team win the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
I met that guy in London when I had nothing, and he gave me an afternoon, and we've been friends, and he's amazing. Again, another understated Kiwi just doing like elite work based on literally principles of Maori mythology, and the idea of whakapapa are essential to the way that he sort of guides teams towards high performance. And so, you know, kind of work, you know, all of a sudden, let's Allbirds at 1,000 people, we need to get a little sharper. And one of his big insights is the value is just getting better a little bit. That's not enough. You've got to attach stories to that from your history. And those things, whether they're good or bad, whether they failed or not, that's actually how you tell people how to behave and how you guide sort of standards and in the myriad of different decisions you make at any given moment. And it's one thing to say, hey, you want to get better a little bit, you know, we want to be resilient. It's another thing to tell a story about renting and driving in a pink car. And so, you know, that sort of stuff is like, I'm learning a lot and getting the opportunity to kind of understand how Owen does it. And so some of that stuff is just, you know, it's a different type of challenge. So
final question for me. What happens if you go to smallbirds.com?
Well, two things. So we name Allbirds, and we're excited about it. You know, when people first came to New Zealand, there's nothing there, no mammals, just birds. So nod to where we came from. And then we find out, I think, after we've sort of signed off on it, that it actually means kilos of cocaine in rap parlance, and everyone's like, "Oh no, we've really." So that ended up. I remember there was a Kiwi brand guy that was helping us, and I told him the story. He goes, "Oh, that's the best." Absolutely, he's like, that's the best. And then we launch a kids line of clothing, and we call it Smallbirds because the name's so good. And then we find out smallbirds.com, and I think, Seamus, you probably knew this already, had some questionable content, but we managed to kind of get the domain and get away from that. So I'll leave you to use your imagination as to what was present on that site. If not, Seamus will be able to tell you about it. So there's been some good bits along the way, but here we are. But it's such a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you for letting me share the story.
Oh mate, it's been so cool, and it's so inspirational what you've done. But yeah, like I said, I've reached out to a few people. We like getting sort of external views on our guests. So, guys, source I mentioned earlier, Ian Bridges, who's a ambassador who lives with you in San Fran. I asked him what Tim's like, and he said, Tim has this inspiring and unique ability to have these really big picture out there ideas, but he matches them with a crisp, clear vision of what that looks like and how you go from here to there. It's not wishy-washy at all. He really believes in these things, and it has all pieced together in his head. He's also really focused. I remember once him telling me in the early days, as Allbirds was growing quickly, he bikes to work, thinks about the 3 things that he will do that day, 3, then he does them, and that's a good day. But it keeps him focused and making progress. Finally, he is as low-key, low-ego as you get. Total kiwi in that respect. Never gets carried away in the ups, stable and humble in the lows. He's very self-depreciating, always happy to make fun of himself, has an amazing drive and persistence to make things work. And I think after talking to you, it's Ian's pretty on the money. Does that sound accurate to you?
Oh, well, he's a special guy. That's very, very kind words. I'm glad there's a couple other characters you could have tracked down. I'm glad you didn't, because they would have been.
They're very tight-lipped to some of the other cast of characters that you've already referenced in this podcast.
One more to come.
Less kind, exactly. Oh, yeah, no, look, it's good. Like I sort of said, you that's the goal, right? You don't forget where you come from. Have fun along the way. Treat people the same.
Good stuff.
That's the goal.
Hey, Wool Runner 2, where can we get that from?
Well, really excited. So again, went back to that same farm, 3rd time round, more crew, bigger budget, but still my mum involved, and reshot it a couple of weeks ago, and it just launched today here in November, and then the shoes there's one store in Auckland and online, and we're really excited to have that back in the world. Jamie McClellan, New Zealand designer, who was one of the first people I met, has been instrumental in getting this product out to market. So shout out to him. He's living on Waiheke Island at the moment, and it's a proud day. So yeah, you keep getting a little bit better. It's the key.
Oh, we're gonna final words from me, and they're from the voice of football here in New Zealand. It's Jason Pine, and Piney says, from my personal point of view, Brownie is one of the best people I've ever met, ever. Never have I had a conversation with him that I haven't gone away from feeling better than before we had it. He's a true inspiration. I love the way he played his football, but I'm in awe of what he's achieved post-football. He has incredible integrity. I think he's a genuine Kiwi treasure and someone who hasn't really got true recognition for what he's done, mainly because he constantly deflects to others. And I echo Piney's sentiments there. Incredibly uplifted from sitting and sharing an audience with you this afternoon. Energizing story, and you really are a Kiwi treasure. So keep on doing what you're doing.
Oh, that's beyond kind. Thank you. Yeah, Piney, what a special guy. That's mate, I should come and chat with you guys more often. This is bloody kind of you. Oh, I appreciate it, and congratulations on what you're building in this podcast, and for the willingness to kind of go into some of the stuff. We went pretty deep, but I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tim. Yeah, really loved your time, and you're a hero of ours, so cheers.
Oh, cheers. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brownie.